G'day, how's it going? You are watching Comics with your mate Failbait, looking at Marvel comics on sale on Comixology this week. And this is a spotlight on just the one comic today, but for me it's a comic that ranks as one of the best Marvel comics from this century. It's Hawkeye, written by Matt Fraction, illustrated by, apologies if I pronounce this wrong, David Aja, and coloured by Matt Hollingsworth, featuring many other artists like Annie Wu and Francesco Francavilla. Now this channel could very easily be a Matt Fraction Appreciation YouTube channel. He's probably one of my favourite comic book writers, and this one here, Hawkeye, is a big reason why. It's a tightly plotted story about not just one Hawkeye, but two, as they try and protect an apartment building from evil gangsters. Now that's where the story starts, and it grows very well organically from there, because each of these creators brings something unique to the story that elevates it above its contemporaries. And as you can see, it's 76% off. Every issue of Matt Fraction and David Aja's Hawkeye is on sale for 76% off, and it's absolutely worth it. It's probably the best deal on Comixology right now for Marvel Comics, and you're about to find out why. It's because all of these creators seem to fully understand the aesthetic and scope of the comic they are creating, synergizing so well with each other that it makes for one of the great collaborations. When Fraction writes a fast, zippy scene of hilarious quips, Aja draws the scene with clear precision to fully support the verbal riposts, colors being used to emphasize the feelings and emotions being brought to the scene with smart lighting and shading. Then when it gets to the action, there's a punchiness to David Aja's art that brings you right into it with brisk and frenetic energy. And it's Matt Hollingsworth's colors that keeps you there, trapped in the moods and tones to remind you just how painful and dangerous it is for a human archer to be in the thick of combat. And timing it to perfection is Matt Fraction, who knows just when to move things along or to keep it slow, whether it's a crisp and fast-paced with little dialogue, or making sure to draw our attention to the classic superhero one-liners and banter. And this isn't just across one or two issues. It's a consistency that stays throughout the entire series, with a host of other collaborators. His partnership with Annie Wu, for example, transports us readers to the West Coast for a few issues with Kate Bishop, the second Hawkeye, all sun-drenched with a neater palette to contrast the two Hawkeyes. And it's here that I think the story really shines, in the way that it portrays its two leads as two sides of the same coin. The almost war-weary and battle-hardened Clint Barton, whose outlook on the world has changed after years and years of fighting against aliens and gods and monsters. And on the other side is Kate Bishop, whose exuberance for heroics is matched by her other superpower, which is being the only one capable of suffering the insufferable Clint Barton. Except these aren't the only two heroes you'll find in the story. There's issues with Spider-Man and Wolverine, but more prominently there's ones with Black Widow, Spider-Woman, and Mockingbird, all part of Clint Barton's history, but probably like you've never seen them before. Just like Clint's Hawkeye, we meet them more in their civilian identities than their superhero ones, and relationships of all kinds are tested and strained in both comic and dramatical ways. Very, very human, very relatable, reminding us that despite the small stakes of the plot, Clint and Kate are part of a much bigger world full of heartfelt drama and romance. The villains, however, are just as cool, maybe sometimes even cooler, whether it's the Tracksuit Mafia or Madame Mask. They're all treated with similar stories and characterization as a way to maybe, humanize the heroes a bit more, but also remind us that, that the villains are cruel, and maybe give us a bit of their motivations and desires. And the clown right there in the middle, probably one of the coolest villains in the entire story. But at its heart, this is very much a story about not just one Hawkeye, but two. A story that these Avengers are human and relatable and interesting because of it. Matt Fraction, David Aja, and Matt Hollingsworth comic proves that not only does Hawkeye belong in the Avengers, but that he needs to be there. And it's been a recurring theme throughout recent media, from the films, TV shows, and comics, that the heart of the team is the most human characters, and that it's important for superheroes to have a human side to them, whether it's Thor, Hulk, or Iron Man, or anyone, in this case Hawkeye. And that's what this series does really well, and it shows perfectly. It shows that realism in comics doesn't have to come from violent, gritty, and dark themes. It can come from the heroism in humanity and mundanity, or the mundane. It's about making friends with your neighbors, it's about adopting a pet, it's about accepting your family back and fighting back against the Tracksuit Mafia, the big bad. And from this story sprung a slew of postmodern comics, whether it was things like Superior Foes of Spider-Man from Nick Spencer and Steve Lieber, as well as Tom King and Gabriel Hernandez Walters' Vision comic. Matt Fraction and David Archer's Hawkeye really left a long-lasting and deserving legacy of storytelling on Marvel Comics. And like I said at the start, it's all on sale for 76% off. It's a great deal, and I think you should buy it. I definitely think you should buy it. So thanks for watching Comics with your mate Failbait, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bro